Trump and Putin meet in Helsinki. And the softness in their faces, the genuine smiles that goes all the way up to the head on both gentlemen, including Melania. There's no stiffness between them. They're fine being in each other's spaces. And this is just the serious face they put on for their pictures. You see this one, Putin is flexing his mouth muscle, stressing the forehead, impatience and waiting for the Googling photographers and journalists to leave. And Trump just looks irritated. His irritation is what he's looking at. That I thought was really neat. Putin's watching Donald. And so Donald is gesturing towards the media or those in front of him. And as soon as Donald begins to sit, then Putin sits. So he waits for Trump. And then Trump turns and gestures for him to sit first. So in this, you're seeing that Putin is taking his cue, his idea of when to move based on Trump. And then you saw a little wink. And you see Putin's reaction back to it. The wink from Trump. And then Putin hand out towards Trump. Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's a knowledge between the two of them and not us. Intimacy. And then we see frustration. Both of them waiting for this to be over.
Уважаемый господин президент, мне очень приятно встретиться с вами здесь.
So it's in there, he was looked at Putin to begin with when he started talking, as if in a, I'm going to listen to you speak. They've been talking on the phone and other ways of interaction. But he starts talking and he's speaking Russian. He's got his translator. And it was like he had a little sheepish moment, Trump did, because he's like, okay, I'm looking, and okay, I don't understand. Goes back center. There he's looking, smiles, and then you see that mouth movement, like it comes open, jaw goes back, a little bit of stiffness, and then just relax. It's just telling me that the relationship between these two is much more intimate than is put on.
Well, first of all, Mr. President, I'd like to congratulate you on a really great World Cup, one of the best ever, from what everybody tells me, one of the best.
I sit there and saw that. That was interesting. So Putin, those of you who don't know, he does speak English, and he understands it really well.
Ever, and also for your team itself doing so well.
And you see how Putin reacts appropriately at the appropriate times to the words coming out of Trump's mouth. That's because he understands English.
Most importantly, we have a lot of good things to talk about and things to talk about. We have discussions on everything from trade to military to missiles to nuclear to China. We'll be talking a little bit about China. Our mutual friend, President Xi.
While he's giving out this list of what they're going to be talking about, we don't see any stress in Putin. He's doing a little bit of finger thing, but he's been doing that. So this didn't give a extra rise in stress.
У нас есть огромное количество тем, которые нам надо будет обсудить, очень интересные темы, начиная с таких вопросов, как торговля, коммерция, военные вопросы, также вопросы.
And something that translator did, he did not like, and I'm talking about Putin, right there. She said something that didn't match what came out of Trump's mouth.
Связанные с Китаем, с ядерной политикой, поговорим также о нашем будущем.
And then as he listened through whatever, she must have rounded it up in a way that meant the same thing.
I think we have great opportunities together as two countries that, frankly, we have not been getting along very well for the last number of years. I've been here not too long, but it's getting close to 2 years. But I think we will end up having an extraordinary relationship. I hope so. I've been saying, and I'm sure you've heard over the years, and as I campaigned, that getting along with Russia is a good thing, not a bad thing.
У наших двух стран есть огромная возможность для того, чтобы наладить наши отношения на протяжении нескольких лет.
And now he's paying attention to her. It makes me think that he's scrutinizing Trump's translator for accuracy. All right, let's move on.
And with that, the world awaits, and I look forward to our personal discussion, which I think begins now, and then we're going to meet our whole team. You have quite a few representatives on I do, and we all have a lot of questions, and hopefully we'll come up with answers, most importantly. It's great to be with you.
свою команду, большое количество людей, и я думаю, что мы сможем обсудить большое количество очень важных для нас вопросов.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Now the smiles come out, Mr. Putin.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you very much.
In his feet. He's ready to go. This has all been a dog and pony show with everybody watching. He's positioned his hand down, holding onto that chair. Talking about Putin. For those of you who don't know, he has some kind of injury. I'm not quite sure what it is, but it affects the way he walks. And if you have an injury and you are stressed or you're sitting uncomfortably on the injury, you're going to show signs of it. And so him grabbing onto that chair leads me to believe that his injury is starting to flare up in that chair. And so watch it through and see how his body reacts to that.
And I really think the world wants to see us get along. We are the two great nuclear powers. We have 90% of the nuclear, and that's not a good thing, it's a bad thing. And I think we hopefully can do something about that, because it's not a positive force, it's a negative force.
Because the rest of his body, as Trump's speaking to him, is very relaxed. It's just that. I would guess that this is due to his injury, and he's trying to find a comfortable position without looking weak.
Спасибо большое. Thank you so much.
And Putin is really happy about this. They're about to do their press conference after that long thing, and he's got a joyous face. It's like whatever was talked about, planned, or whatever, he's got a happy little face. And so does Trump. It's like a little smirk. Look at him.
Shall we start working, I guess?
And now the show begins.
Distinguished Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen. Negotiations with the President of the United States, Donald Trump, took place in a frank and businesslike atmosphere. I think we can call it a success and a very fruitful round of negotiations. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much.
That's grace right there. So Trump looks at him. Thank you. And Putin wasn't looking. So then Putin looks, tight-lipped, like, I started it. Stress in the forehead. I did it. I really like these two.
Thank you. I have just concluded a meeting with President Putin on a wide range of critical issues for both of our countries. We had direct, open, deeply productive dialogue. Went very well. Before I begin, I want to thank President Niinisto of Finland for graciously hosting today's summit. President Putin and I were saying how lovely it was and what a great job they did. I also want to congratulate Russia and President Putin for having done such an excellent job in hosting the World Cup. It was really one of the best ever, and your team also did very well. It was a great job. I'm here today to continue the proud tradition of bold American diplomacy. From the earliest days of our republic, American leaders have understood that diplomacy and engagement is preferable to conflict and hostility. A productive dialogue is not only good for the United States and good for Russia, but it is good for the world. The disagreements between our two countries are well known, and President Putin and I discussed them at length today. But if we're going to solve many of the problems facing our world, then we're going to have to find ways to cooperate in pursuit of shared interests. President Putin, I want to thank you again for joining me for these important discussions and for advancing open dialogue between Russia and the United States. Our meeting carries on a long tradition of diplomacy between Russia, the United States, for the greater good of all. And this was a very constructive day. This was a very constructive few hours that we spent together. It's in the interest of both of our countries to continue our conversation, and we have agreed to do so. I'm sure we'll be meeting again in the future, often, and hopefully we will solve every one of the problems that we discussed today. So, again, President Putin, thank you very much.
Okay, I see genuine smile on Putin.
Before the meeting with President Putin, you called him an adversary, a rival, and yet you expressed hope that you will be able to bring this relationship to a new level. Did you manage to do this?
Actually, I called him a competitor, and a good competitor he is.
And Putin agrees with it. We see the net positive head shake. This does not give either one of them stress, this question. This does not put tension between the two governments.
Mr. President, you tweeted this morning that it's U.S. foolishness, stupidity, and the Mueller probe that is responsible for the decline in U.S. relations with Russia. Do you hold Russia at all accountable for anything in particular? And if so, what would you consider them that they are responsible for?
Yes, I do. I hold both countries responsible. I think that the United States has been foolish. I think we've all been foolish. We should have had this dialogue a long time ago, a long time, frankly, before I got to office. And I think we're all to blame. I think that the United States now has stepped forward along with Russia, and we're getting together, and we have a chance to do some great things, whether it's nuclear proliferation in terms of stopping. We have to do it. Ultimately, that's probably the most important thing that we can be working on. But I do feel that we have both made some mistakes. I think that the probe is a disaster for our country. I think it's kept us apart. It's kept us separated. There was no collusion at all. Everybody knows it. People are being brought out to the fore. So far that I know, virtually none of it related to the campaign. And they're going to have to try really hard to find somebody that did relate to the campaign. That was a clean campaign. I beat Hillary Clinton easily. And frankly, we beat her. And I'm not even saying from the standpoint, we won that race. And it's a shame that there can even be a little bit of a cloud over it. People know that, people understand it, but the main thing, and we discussed this also, is zero collusion. And it has had a negative impact upon the relationship of the two largest nuclear powers in the world. We have 90% of nuclear power between the two countries. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous what's going on with the probe.
For President Putin, if I could follow up as well, why should Americans and why should President Trump believe your statement that Russia did not intervene in the 2016 election, given the evidence that U.S. intelligence agencies have provided? And will you consider extraditing the 12 Russian officials that were indicted last week by a U.S. grand jury?
The issue of these 12 alleged intelligence officers of Russia. I don't know the full extent of the situation, but the President Trump mentioned this issue, and I will look into it. So far, I can say the following. The things that, off the top of my head, we have an existing agreement between the United States of America and the Russian Federation, an existing treaty that dates back to 1999, the mutual assistance on criminal cases. This treaty is in full effect. It works quite efficiently. On an average, we initiate about 150 criminal cases upon requests from foreign states. For instance, the last year, there was one extradition case upon the request sent by the United States. So this treaty has specific legal procedures. We can offer that the appropriate commission headed by Special Attorney Mueller, he can use this treaty as a solid foundation and send an official request to us so that we would hold a questioning of these individuals who he believes are privy to some crimes. And our law enforcement are perfectly able to do this questioning and send the appropriate materials to the United States. Moreover, We can meet you halfway, we can make another step. We can actually permit official representatives of the United States, including the members of this very commission headed by Mr. Mueller, we can let them into the country and they will be present to this questioning. But in this case, there's another condition. This kind of effort should be a mutual one. Then we would expect that the Americans would reciprocate and they would question officials, including the
Trump gives a head of knowledge, head in the positive on that one.
Officers of law enforcement and intelligence services of the United States, whom we believe who have something to do with illegal actions on the territory of Russia. And we have to request the presence of our law enforcement.
They've got plans right out of the horse's mouth.
This is the end of the snippet. The full version of the video can be viewed at bombardsbodylanguage.com. The link is in the description, where you can also sign up to view exclusive crime series of videos that delve into the minds of some of history's most notorious criminals. Your subscriptions ultimately are what allow Mandy to keep making videos full time.
A big thank you to all of my supporters.